Okay, so here's another really simple technique. Like I said, self-defense should be very simplistic. If it's complicated, it will get you killed. All right, we don't want complications. Quick and easy. All right, so she does a forearm choke. She has me pressed up like this. Naturally, you're gonna try to fight that to get off. So the first thing I do, I put my hands up. I can go into her eyes here. I can hit here, all right? But now, look at what I do with this hand. I shift it to the side. As I shift it to the side, I roll in, choke out, push away, get into my fight stance, okay? So watch this again. Hands up, hit, move. You see, parry that to the side, go into a triangle choke. Tap when you feel. There you go, that's the choke itself. Here, push away, get ready, okay? Real simple technique, one more time. Hands up, mush the face. You see how I move that elbow right to my right? Shoot in. My right grabs the bicep as I take my left, coming to the side of her head, apply. Night night for her. お願いします。
お願いします。Hello everyone, I'm Kidan.
And I'm Tamika.
And we are two brown ladies. We are here today with Barak Sensei at the Tenrai Dojo. Thank you for joining us today.
Very welcome. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. We want to get right in to what the beginnings look like for you with martial arts. What's your origin?
How did you get started?
How did you get started? Your earliest memory of being involved in martial arts?
Well, martial arts was introduced to me by my father. My family is a military law enforcement family, so pretty much everyone has been in the military or did some kind of service. My father learned martial arts overseas. He continued his training when he came back from the war. From there, he wanted to pass those traditions down to me. He felt that because we grew up in a pretty bad neighborhood, grew up in the north end of Springfield, Massachusetts. So at that particular time, and still now, you know, there's a lot of crime elements there in that area. So my father felt that it was important for a man to know how to defend themselves. So that's where the martial arts was introduced into my life.
Awesome.
Yes.
And I know that there's a story that we've talked about prior to this interview, where you encountered your first martial artist, kind of unbeknownst to you.
Yes.
I think you're about 14 years old. Tell us about that story.
Yeah. So, well, after my father transitioned, he was really good friends with a well-renowned gentleman by the name of Professor Calacano Griffin. I met him in the strangest of ways. I was coming home from school and he just happened to be sitting on his porch. There was a domestic dispute taking place. One guy picked up a brick to throw at a woman. I've seen this man get up with lightning speed. He grabbed that brick right out of mid-flight before it hit that woman, and he just pointed at the dude. I mean, there was some profanity, you know, but there was a lot of anger there. And he said, if I ever see you again, he cracked the brick with his hand, split right in half. All right. From that time, me walking home, I witnessed this. I didn't approach the gentleman, I just kept it moving, but in my mind I was recording over, it was playing over and over again. I was like, you know what kind of grip you gotta have to be able to crack a brick?
Right.
It wasn't like it exploded or anything, not like any movies or anything, it just cracked right in the center, and one half just fell down, and I was just like, whoa, that's a bad man, all right? And he had really big hands. One particular day I was walking back up, it was the next day, and he happened to be sitting there. And he just said, hey, how you doing? My name is Mr. Griffin. And I didn't recognize his face at the time, but I knew his last name because we always heard his name throughout the streets in Springfield, Massachusetts. And so I was like, wait a minute, you're the Master Griffin? And he said, don't call me master. All right, call me Mr. Griffin. And then that's when the lessons started from there. So yeah, that was interesting right there. That was a pretty interesting ride. And then from there, helped build his school in his backyard. That was fun. I learned a lot doing that from there. But when I got a little older, this was still in the 90s, I used to travel to Boston. I had a lot of family in Boston at that time. And so I would travel there and spend the summers there. And that's when I met a Japanese man, an old Japanese man by the name of Mariyoshi Nakayama, at a pizza shop, of all places. Yeah, that's where that journey started.
Tell us more about that story. So what happened in this pizza shop?
Well, pretty much, I was going there to get a slice. I wasn't even paying attention to the old man sitting in the corner. He happened to notice that I had a book, and it was called The Book of the Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi. And he was like, did you read that book entirely? And I was like, no, I just got it. And he was like, well, when you're finished reading, I would like to talk to you about that. You know, and I was like, well, how do I find you? You see me here all the time. I'm always here, all right, reading the paper. And yes, he was religiously there. So after a few months have passed, he asked me questions about the book. Have I completed the book? I haven't completed the book, but I was halfway through the book. And then he started asking me questions, all right, that was based on the book. And the Book of the Five Rings talks about the five elements. We're talking Chi, Sui, Ga, Fu, Gu, earth, wind, water, fire, and the void. And how these elements correspond with everyday life, from the heavens to on the earth. But also the mindset that a warrior should be in from day in and day out. It's a way of life. From there, having these really deep, rich conversations with Sensei, at that particular time, I didn't know he knew martial arts. I had no idea, all right? But we would have these conversations on a regular basis. And then one particular day, he invited me to his house. And he had a really big garage. And he invited me in, opened up the door, and it was a dojo.
Wow.
All right, and it looked like Japan. It looked like I was in Japan. I was no longer in Boston. I was in Japan. And it turned out that he was a sensei, and he was also a Japanese historian. All right, so he was a scholar. So, you know, this is the first time he asked me about shinobi jutsu. And I never heard that term before. And so he said, do you know anything about that? And I said, no, absolutely, I don't. I never heard of that before. And so he said, have you ever heard of ninja? And that's when I was like, oh yeah, I got magazines on ninjas all day, you know? And he says, well, I teach ninjutsu, taijutsu, goshinjutsu, jujutsu, judo, you know, and so on and so forth. And the list went on, and I was like, wow. And so the first lessons being with him was very academic. All right, so it wasn't like get on the mat and start learning anything with the body or hands like what you would see in most dojos. It was more about mental fortitude, making sure your mind was sound. I cannot give a loaded firearm to a child. Let's just look at it like that. So you have to be trained first. Versus a lot of schools here, they need to keep their students. So they gotta feed them quickly. And if they don't get what they expect, they walk away. So this was his way of, how should I say, molding me from a lump of clay, but also testing me at the same time, because these are treasures, all right, sacred treasures. And you don't want to just share this with anybody. So I had to go through that whole process.
Okay, so about how old were you when this process started?
Oh, I think I was about maybe like 14 at the time. Yeah, about 14 at the time.
So you've been on this journey for a while.
Yes, I've been on this journey since 6 years old.
Right.
That's when it all started.
Right, with your dad and then it transitioned.
Yes,
to,
yes.
So walk us through this journey, please.
Yes, so I mean, oh boy. There was a lot that came with the training. Like I said, it first started off academic. Me just remembering certain historical events, taking tests, okay? When it got physical, same thing even with my father, you know, just going back to my father, rewinding it. My father was very rough with me, very hands-on. Mr. Griffin was the same way too. If you want to learn how to protect yourself in the streets, we see this kind of slow action. Of course, we want to be slow and easy at first, but my father was more on some accelerated kind of, teaching where, no, you need to know now, so I'm going to swing at you with all my might, and you better get out the way, and if you don't, you get smashed.
Wow.
And I got smashed a couple of times, and he would open his palm. He would open his palm and not make a fist, and he would just swing. First couple of times, my little butt, because I was a real skinny guy, little skinny kid, I was just running into walls, making holes, putting holes in walls, left and right, and getting up and crying and going back. So it was very brutal in the very beginning, but it trained me well. It really put me in a certain mental state. So when I was in the street, I was ready for any and everything. All right, and so, like I said, this kind of training protected me a lot of times out there. So when people say, "Oh, that stuff doesn't work," this, that, and the third, I just look at them because it's very ignorant of them. It's no more different than you go to school. Why you gotta graduate? Why you gotta go to college? Why you gotta do this? Well, I want a better job. I want a better life. Right? Makes sense, right? And so this is the same thing with the training. I want a better life. All right? So in order to have a better life or be able to preserve one's life, all right, you need to know how to hold your own.
Right.
And so, like magic tricks, it's so funny, right? If I do a magic trick right in front of you, right? Beautiful trick, dazzles you. Oh my God, how did you do that? All right, rule number one, the magician never tells the secrets, right? Solid gold. Now, let's just say because we are family, I decide to share the secret with you, all right? Because it blew your mind. But when I share that secret with you, what is the clapback I usually get? And it's pretty much 90% to 100% of the time. I knew that's what you did. All right? I knew you did something like that, this, that, and the third. But why were you so dazzled when I first did it? So, same thing with self-defense in the streets. Okay, if I show you the magic trick, then you go, oh, no, I just showed it to you. Versus you put your hands on me the first time, or you swing the first time, now you don't know what's going to come out, all right? And now you're laid out. And now, so it's been tested and proven multiple times. But that road was a rough road. And then being with Nakayama Sensei was the same thing too, but it was a different kind of discipline being with him, all right? He was soft and hard all at once, okay? So the training was similar but different.
How do you take those lessons? Some of them, like I said, are very different. So one is very cerebral, right? It's like you said, he's a scholar. We're going to learn about all these things. Whereas, especially being a young person, you see all the movies, you see all these different things that are fantasies, and you're like, I want to do these things.
Right.
And it's like, no, let's focus on the foundation first. So how do you take those pieces and put them together along your journey as you go?
Okay, it's like building a house. You got to get the timber, you got to get the wood. You got to have the tools, the nails. I mean, so there's certain materials that you need, and each one complements the next. All right. So being that we're talking a martial means war, or it's a European term. All right, because that's a pretty interesting thing there too. The word martial didn't really exist in Asian countries. They just called it what it was. All right, and then the Europeans coined that word martial. But the martial arts is war. All right, and if we're dealing with war, there is no such thing as being gentle or kind. All right, it's a switch that you need to know how to turn off and turn on. And so the mental fortitude helps that part. The spiritual essence of the training helps that part. When you take the mental out and you take the spiritual part out of the training, you get a beast in the streets. All right, and that's what you get. Sad to say, but that's what you get in MMA. All right, and some of the others, because they took all the disciplines out, because no one wants to learn that. No one wants to sit here and meditate. No one wants to do that. Their mind is rattling. This is going 1,000 miles a second. So they're like, yo, I just want to punch and hit the heavy bag and just get it in. All right, but what happens is now you got a loaded gun on your hands.
Yeah.
All right, so now that person's at the bar. All right, and someone just nudges them a certain way, and it's an accident, and the person didn't mean to do it, and you're ready to pop off. all right? Because you don't know how to control. You don't even know how to mentally deal with the situation. That's first and foremost. That's a bad thing, all right? First thing I was taught is learning how to talk mind to mind, all right? Before it gets to hands, we're gonna work on the mind. I'm gonna hit you with my mind first, all right? And see how you hold that. And if it goes to anything, if it goes anywhere further, then okay, you can get these hands. You get my whole body if you want it. But the first part is the mind. So learning how to have a strong mind at a young age, especially how we were so easily influenced then, at those times, we're talking, I mean, like I started my training much earlier, but growing up in the 80s, from the 70s to the 80s, and now the 90s, which the 90s was pretty cool to 95, and then things started changing up along the way to the millennium. All right, and so being in those streets at those particular times, if I did not have the mental stability, I would have been ate up a long time ago, or I would have been under the jail. And I lost a lot of good martial art friends that got thrown under the jail for, like, literally overkilling someone. All right, just like you took him down, you could have stopped, but you just wanted to rip his jaw open, and you wanted to do X, Y, and Z. You couldn't control the animal, and that's what it is. We have this beast that's in us. All right. And we keep it in the cage, all right? But when it's time for it to come out the cage, it comes out, and then it goes right back in. We're like an avatar, okay? So yeah, it all connects together.
Yes, it does. So would you say it's like 90% mental, 10% physical? Did you have to like scale it? How much of it is actually mental?
100% of it is all
100%.
mental. 100% is all mental. They're all 100% within their own right. Okay, so there is you find the balance between those percentages. Okay, so it's a 100% mental game, it's a 100% spiritual game, and it's a 100% physical game. So what I teach my students, first thing you have to learn is how to regulate the breath. All right, you have to learn how to breathe. I mean, we're living beings. We walk this earth every day. All right, some of us don't even know how to breathe right. Some of us destroy our lungs, by putting all kinds of harmful things into our body. So learning how to breathe and enjoy what the universe has given us is one. Learning how to regulate your breath with all your movements. Okay, and that's something your brain shouldn't have to tell you to do. All right, it's just automatic, like your heartbeat. So learning how to regulate your breath. Once you learn how to regulate your breath, you can regulate your flesh, all right? Because when you breathe, when you exercise, all right, that gas, that air, that oxygen that you're pulling in is what your muscles need to thrive,
right?
All right, so you have to combine those two, all right? Once you learn how to regulate the breath, then you regulate the mind, because you have to sync the mind with the breath in order to control your breathing, because there are different kind of breathing methods. Okay, so these are the steps, these are the patterns. Now, once you can regulate that mind, then you can regulate the spirit. All right, because you can't touch the spirit if your mind is incorrect.
Right.
All right.
I agree with that.
Right, and when you regulate the spirit, then you can regulate the chi, or the ki, or the bioelectricity, that force that's within inside us, that aura that shines out. All right, so this is like my little recipe book on how to pull it all together. All right, so you're not lopsided out there. Yeah.
So you mentioned these are some of the things that you teach in your dojo.
Yes.
So let's get into the origin of your dojo and how, what inspired you to not only be a student, but now a practitioner teaching other people that are, willing to learn the art form, and what inspired you to start your own dojo?
Well, I've been teaching for quite some time. My dojo, the Tenurai Dojo, has been in operation for about 10 years now, I believe. It started in 2011, I believe. All right, and so it's been in operation, not a little bit more over 10 years, let's say 11. All right, but now, as far as teaching is concerned, I've been teaching. I was a junior instructor. So I used to teach a lot of kids in the backyard back in the day. I used to have the whole Eastern Ave crew back there training, and I was much older than them. They were just kids, okay? And so in order for me, I always found instruction special, all right? Like, I love the student-teacher relationship. That's why I always say I'm a student first, teacher second. Most people would just say, no, I'm just sensei. I'm like, no, because I'm always learning. And if I'm not learning, then I'm dead. I'm in a coffin. All right. So there's always something to learn. That you should be growing every day. I don't care how old you are. You should always be learning and connecting and making new bridges. Okay. Now, as far as the school is concerned, I ran into a bump in the road when I was in New York City. And, I used to be in the music industry, and I decided to make a change. And the next step was, what am I going to do next? All right, because I already train and I do what I do, but what am I going to do next? And I had to ponder on that for quite some time, because opening up a martial arts school is a big responsibility. People are putting their lives in your hands, all right? And you have to make sure that, you're keeping your people safe, all right? So it's not just, hey, it's a business, make money. No, it's bigger and it's deeper than that. And so my sensei, Nakayama Sensei, I have communication with him through dream states. And so they're, spreading, the tradition, the family traditions, sharing it with like minds. And I was constantly around beautiful minds in the city. And a lot of the folks that were in the city were entrepreneurs. They were opening up their own businesses. And I was just blown away. I was like, yo, in New York, you can just do whatever you want to do. All you got to do is just put your mind to it. And that was it, right there.
Just to ask quickly, dream state, you mentioned that.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
Well, what it is that sometimes when I go into a dream state, my dreams kind of get merged in with different realities. So sometimes, for instance, for me personally, sometimes your brain can entertain your mind when you're going into your unconscious state. For me personally, I feel that I dimension hop. Okay, and so with my beliefs, once again, we transition into energy. And so with that energy, there's information in that energy, all right? Whether it's light or whatever it may be, there's always something there. There's a message there. So every now and then, my teachers and certain friends and family that have transitioned appear to me.
So the dream state, dimension jumping.
Yes.
I call them ancestors.
Say again?
I call them ancestors.
Yes.
You call them energies.
Yes. No, ancestors is a proper term too, But also at the same time, when I think ancestors, I think from my bloodline.
Your lineage.
Right, but I'm connected with other folks that are not of my bloodline at all.
It's so funny because I feel like whenever you're like a teacher, you taught me something and there's love there. Like I would consider you my ancestor, but that's just me.
Right.
Like,
No, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. All right, now back to you.
Nah. But so what it is that that's how I seek guidance. So if I hit a stumbling block, then what people do, they make petitions, prayer, go to the altar, try to make that connection, bridge that gap to get some kind of guidance. And that's what I do when I hit a road, when I hit a bump in the road or hit a wall. So I seek that guidance, and the universe gives me an answer, and then I move on that. So yeah, that pretty much sums it up as far as making that connection when I talk about, in that dream state.
Okay.
Yes.
So as a martial artist, a black martial artist, how has that affected your journey to where you are today? Has it affected it? How are you seen as a black martial artist, knowing that a lot of what you're learning comes from Japan? How are you received in the martial community?
I get a lot of love, a lot of appreciation, but there's also a lot of hate too as well. A lot of us, I'm saying as black folk in general in the martial arts, has always been looked at as suspect. All right, you got to think that in those particular times learning martial arts, you had to have this money. All right, and we were in the hood. All right, we didn't have the fancy dojos and all that other stuff that you would find in the suburban neighborhoods. They operated different. We operated different because we were in the hood, so it was different. It was like, yeah, you a black belt, but can you fight? All right, and so that's a difference. All right, you're a black belt here. In here, you're a black belt, but out there, are you a black belt? Can you fight for real? All right, and you'll be amazed that there's a lot of folks that rock a belt. They can show you everything from A to Z, but they can't fight. And so it's kind of crazy when you look at that. It's like, wow, why are you even teaching martial arts if you can't really bump in the first place? That is a weird one right there. All right, but people make money off of this. So anyways, for, you know, being black, yes, you always second guess with education and everything else that you do in life. You know, folks don't believe you. And so for the longest, that's what you're going to run into. You know, hey, I'm qualified for X, Y, and Z. Here's my credentials. You can vet it. You can check it out. Some things you may not be able to find. Some things you may be able to find, but it was always there. So racism was heavily in the martial arts, especially with the magazine publications that were out there at that time. I'm not going to get into naming them, all right? But you know what was on the front cover all the time. You would see the Chuck Norrises. You know, you would see, you know, all these other performers out there, great martial artists, but they were movie stars and martial artists. All right, you couldn't be in the martial art world if you weren't a martial artist. So a good portion of martial artists you see in those B-flick films back in the 80s and 90s, they studied. All right, and they won some championships at tournaments, and then they were thrown into these films. But a lot of us weren't getting a lot of love, and we were put into a whole nother category when it came to films, all right? When it came to publication. You couldn't find really articles on us. They were there here and there, but you couldn't find them like that, all right? They were in the back classified ads, all right? So you would have to open it up, and then you would see the name of my school right there, and that's as good as it gets. All right, and you would pay for that little slot right there, like you would find in the newspapers.
Right.
All right, but to get a page or to be on the front cover, you could do that now. Now it's become flexible now. All right, but back in the day it was a little bit different. They were on the front cover. There was some people of color on front covers, but it was a lot of shade. All right, so when we want, for instance, some of the greatest fighters, oh my God, we were caking. All right, but we weren't getting the love. We were doing some of the most amazing self-defense demonstrations, but we weren't getting any love. So we had to do our own thing. We had to set our own organizations, all right? Do our own tournaments, all right, that represent us, all right? And you see that's kind of been the dynamic in America, all right? Where we got to do for ourselves because no one's going to recognize us until we come out in great numbers, all right? And even then, now there's fear and we're a threat. So they want to dismantle us as soon as we get together. All right, and it happens all the time. So yes, I had the highs and I had the lows being in the martial arts, being someone who's actually, you know, studied traditional Japanese martial arts of the shinobi and samurai, and being able to share those traditions. So you get a little shade and you get a little love, so it comes with it. That's just part of the game.
So would you say that it's still separated? Are blacks still in one division and whites still in another, and then people who are of Asian descent, they have their own? Or would you say we're coming together?
We definitely have came together. You know, it's been a lot of work. You know, like, you got to look at it like this, right? Martial arts back in the days, when being taught, like, the first martial arts, I believe, that came here to the U.S. was judo. And that was during the Second World War, all right? And then karate became popular, and then in the 70s or so, about there, then kung fu became very popular, but no one could learn it, all right? Because Chinese weren't teaching people of color, so only a few of us slipped in through those cracks, all right? Even myself learning the traditions that I teach, a lot of people don't know those traditions. I slipped through the cracks and happened to be lucky. It was like winning a lottery ticket, finding someone who was willing to teach me. All right, some of us have to go to a regular dojo and just learn these traditions. So yes, we all have came together. We do a lot of events which pulls us together. So I think we've accomplished a lot. All right, but there's still some, you know, some kinks, some wrinkles that need to be straightened out when it comes to, you know, us making ourselves aware. All right. Some people don't want to take the gamble, you know, like for instance, I have a podcasting show, all right, and so it's rare to see two black men, all right, go around the U.S. and go to these different dojos and create these connections with these instructors, and the views and what we get and the responses that come in online, oh my God, you know, it's bad. Some is very good and very positive, and some is bad because there's a lot of hate.
Yeah.
All right. So now we have to look at demographics and where we promote and advertise. First, we were advertising everywhere, and then we started getting clapped back and shade from people in Montana and all over the place. Who's these? What makes them? So everyone has something to say. You got trolls everywhere. So I say, when you put yourself out there, prepare for that clapback. It's going to happen. All right. You just got to know how to navigate it. All right. And don't let it get to you. All right, because that's the biggest part. It really messes with people's emotions. All right, so I don't like to spend my time in social media world, but I have to for a business. But I just see it. I don't care because you don't know me. All right, unless you're gonna come and knock on my door, like I said, you come in pieces or you leave in pieces. How you want to do it? You know what I'm saying?
Right. So that goes to your, the mental fortitude that's needed.
Yeah.
That's part of what you're teaching, right?
Yeah.
As a student, you teach us how to really focus on what we're doing and not reacting.
Right.
Right.
Self-discipline rather than self-protection
Oh.
rather than self-discipline. Does that touch base with that, or is that completely
Well,
different?
they all tie in. They all tie in. You have to be a certain way out here when we're talking about self-protection, self-defense. But also it's how one carries themselves. So reflecting what you were saying, in order to have violence miss you, it's who are you? How do you carry yourself as a human being? What kind of energy do you put out there when you're walking the streets? Do you put out an energy that looks like you're sassy kind of energy? Do you get that kind of back? Sometimes it doesn't matter. You can be all good and get something negative or something bad back. But it's energies, and we respond to those energies. So in the school, yes, I have morals. All right, I don't want just anyone a part of my school because my family is very special to me, and I don't need them. Is very surface level, humility, respect, just being kind to someone, seeing someone down and they look, here, take a couple of bucks. Respect, being respectful. You don't have to like me, but be respectful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Trust, honesty is so important. Someone ask for a favor and you say you're going to do something and don't do it, or I expect you to do something and you don't follow through, it really sets the tone and it really lets me know what kind of person you are. I don't need to go any further after that. But then you have the last parts, which are very mental, like will, that drive to wake up in the morning to work out every day, and like nothing's never gonna get in the way of that, courage. Oh man, that's the biggest part of martial arts right there, having courage, bravery. Just because you're brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It just means that you have fear in control. You have it under control, all right? Everyone fears. Anyone that tells you they don't fear is lying to you right there. So we're not going to be cool right now because I need trust. All right. And if you tell me you never get scared, then there may be something mentally wrong with you. All right. And there's some disconnect or something's going on in your brain. All right. Where you're not able to make that connection. But everyone feels some sense of fear of the unknown. All right. Now it's learning how to control it. Okay. And that's courage. All right, being able to stand up on your own too and say enough is enough. So you have the mental parts of it as well, and those are the most difficult parts. Okay.
Okay. So having your dojo here in Springfield, and you have another location in New York.
Yes.
How has that you've seen affected the community that you live in? Because you started off in New York and then you branched out here.
Yeah.
How has that affected the community?
Well, I could say it hasn't really. I've changed people, not a community.
People are
part
I
of the community.
was gonna say, you have to be the change that you want to see.
Right.
So each one teach one.
Right,
So
there you go, and that's how it spreads. So that's pretty much what it is. I plant seeds. So, I have students from all walks of life, from many different professions. And so some folks come because they can't get their mind is running all over the place, and they need to know how to shut it off and slow everything down. So yeah, with my school, we sit down and talk a lot about these matters. So that's how we begin to help you. All right. So there is a process. All right. So like I said, once again, it's not about getting into learning technique. It's really just seeing how your mind works. So that way, when I do start to teach you the art, you're able to make the connection, and I can fit the art to you and not you to the art.
Yeah. So it's very like personable.
Right.
Like my journey doesn't look like your journey.
Right.
So I have to mentally prepare you for your personal journey. I like that.
Yes, and that's why I became a private teacher versus a public teacher for that very reason. Something like what I'm teaching, it has to be a direct transmission.
Right.
All right, so I'm giving you the food, you're eating and consuming the food versus you among 50 other people. All right, and someone in the back dozing off and I can't see them. All right, but in a setting like this, it becomes very personal. There's a connection being made, and now you're making it's clicking in your mind, and you're able to take it home with you. All right, because the key in my school, like I say, I don't teach you how to fight. I show you how to live. Right. All right, and by that alone, if you just marinate on that, that encompasses self-defense and everything else that comes with it, and it's just not one particular thing. If you want to learn how to fight, I send you to an MMA school. All right, I got some good guys that will teach you how to fight. All right, but most people will come to me, but I see all the stuff that you do. What do you mean? And I'm like, no, fighting that, no, I'm not, that's different.
Yeah.
That's an entirely different thing. You learn how to, I show you some things. You learn how to fight here. You learn how to defend yourself. But I don't want you here just to learn how to fight. My school is much more.
Right. Right.
So we talk about impacting the community. Beyond the dojo, you have a podcast.
Yes.
And you have a YouTube series.
Yes.
Which obviously affects more than just the community, right? That's now.
Or the seeds that you plant.
Yes.
You're planting more seeds on a bigger
scale.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can talk to us about both of those and how you started those and what they're all about.
Okay, so I have a podcast. Well, I am half, the other half of Marshall Mays. Pardon me, the Marshall Mays. So me and my cousin came together when I moved here to Springfield. And what it was me and him would always have these conversations on the porch, Marshall related all the time. And we would go in for hours and hours on end. And it was, we just had a moment and said, hey, how about we start recording what we're talking about and just start cataloging all this? Mm-hmm. And that's when it clicked. It was like, wait a minute, why don't we do a podcast? Mm-hmm. What are we going to call it? So Sensei Lopez brought it to his sensei's attention. Sensei Mareki, and he's a bright mind, a genius man. All right, so he heard it, and he said, you know what you should call it? You should call it the Marshall Maze. Mm-hmm. Izzy called me up and said, yo, the Marshall Maze. And I said, oh, that sounds great. Let's show people how to navigate the world of martial arts, because the biggest problem is you have a lot of charlatans out there opening up dojos. All right, and no one knows if they're real or fake. I mean, and so they're just ripping you off. How do you identify a fake? All right, how do you learn? I mean, let's go into researching martial arts.
Yeah.
All right, but the problem is that we see something and it looks pretty cool, but you never did any research on it. You just go in there and just say, hey, how much is a monthly class? Right. Let's start, and then you just get your uniform and you start training. And this is a bad way, because you don't do this with anything else in life. All right, anything you choose to do, you're going to do some research first, right? Before you do it. And then when you do that research, then you know the right questions to ask. That's like going to a job interview, all right? And you're going for that job, for that particular position. Now the employer is asking you questions about the position and about the company, and you can't even say a thing about it. All right, you didn't do any research on the company before you went there. You don't know when the company opened up, what year. You don't know anything. Who's running it? You want to have a conversation, a dialogue. And that alone will make the employer, hey, we're going to hire this one right here. Okay, so this is the same thing that we're discussing in the podcast. How do we mine this? How do we navigate this field? How do we stop people from being bamboozled?
Right.
But also too, for the people that are really truly being educated and are really learning real martial arts, we're gonna touch on topics, all right, that most people have never heard or heard of it, but didn't know too much about it. So we're gonna dive deep into that. That there kind of gave birth to Modern Combatives. And that became our video series on YouTube, where we made a choice to, let's go to different dojos, all right? And let's see what they got, because at the end of the day, fighting is fighting, all right? So let's see what techniques you're doing, what techniques you're doing, all right? And we're talking about pragmatic self-defense that you can use in the streets that will save your butt, all right? And we know bullcrap when we see bullcrap. So we see a lot of shows out there where you have two individuals that are enthusiasts, all right? They just like it. They like the movies and all that, and they got a great little budget, and they have some great sponsors, so they go to the top of the food chain and they blow up, but they're not real martial artists, all right? Great show, but they're not real martial artists. So they don't know questions to ask the old men, the masters, when they're in these dojos. We do. All right, so we can open up that book, we can open up that box and see what's inside that box. Yeah. All right, and so that's why we decided to do Modern Combatives, because we know the techniques, all right, and we know what questions to ask.
Well, congratulations on both of those.
Yeah, those are really big
because
things.
That's amazing to be able to travel around the country and be able to interview and, like you said, go deep into their practices.
Yes.
I think we're gonna talk about like the last drag in the 1980s and how that changed things, but we are past that.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I guess that's it. Unless you want to go into self-protection or whatever.
Do you want to?
Or we're good.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
all right, a lot of stuff to edit. All right, cool. Do you want to go over a technique?
Oh, yeah, but let's do the wrap up.
Okay, so I'm just gonna. All right. So, how should I wrap this one? So we talked about the principles, maturity. Not maturity. What is it?
So when I say wrap it up, just like where they can find him, his information, like you did with Todd.
Oh, I was gonna try and touch base on his 7 principles, and then say you also have the 2 podcasts out. Where can you be reached?
If you remember all, just.
Okay, we'll just.
Yeah, make it easy.
Make it easier for yourself.
All right, so we are actually gonna wrap up. Can you give us information on how you can be reached?
Yes, I do. I have a website about to be put up. It's under construction right now, so I would tell you to go to the tenrai-seishitsudojo.com and check me out there. But I also have a Facebook school page where you can look me up too as well. So all you would have to do is go onto Facebook and you would type in Barak Yalad Shidoshi, and you would see me right there. And you can link up my school page as well. You can go to Spotify, Google Play for the Martial Mace podcast. We're pretty much all over, so you can just Google that. And the same way as Modern Combatives, you can go to YouTube and type in Modern Combatives, and we'll pop up.
All right, so you have a very long name. Can you spell it slowly for us?
Yes. My name is Barak Yalad, Barak space Yalad, Sensei.
Okay, and that is where they will find you on Facebook.
Yes.
Right. So thank you for your time. Thank you for this interview. We really do appreciate it. And you are going to show us some techniques before we
I'll show you 1-2 quick techniques.
Okay, so I'm going to back it on up and I'm going to let you guys do your thing.
All right.
And it was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. It was a pleasure being on the show.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Okay, so right now we're going to go over a technique that I like to teach my female students. Common, a guy gets on top and chokes them, they want to rape them, or it's just all forms of assault happening right here. So here's a quick technique, all right, to end that situation, real sweet. So you find yourself in this position right here. The person's choking on you. All right, the first thing you want to do is take these 2 free hands here, control, just cup the wrist. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my legs here, and I'm going to put them on her shoulders, and when I buck my hip up, you tap, you feel, both arms broke, okay? So right here, if I do it real quick, pop, I break those arms very quickly, okay? So it's a real simple technique. Grab my neck, chuck. No, I'm doing it purposely. Okay, so I secure here, buck, and both arms break, all right? Real simple, easy. Now, when those arms break, here, buck up, put the foot down, sweep through. So now I bring my right leg onto her abdomen, all right? And so this is what I call a scissor sweep, to just take her off of me. And now I'm on top to pound out, to do what I need to do to get away. So once again, all right, I find myself in this dangerous situation here, secure the wrist, take my legs, bring it over the shoulders, buck up, both arms break, feet come down, shrimp to the side, my shin goes onto her abdomen, all right, and it's like a seatbelt position, all right, and now what I do is I clip 2 legs, and now I'm on top to pound out, all right. So that's a simple basic technique that I like to start my students off with, all right.